Hey, welcome to today's episode of Back Talk, brought to you by Successful Black Parenting Magazine. And I'm your host, Janice Robinson Celeste. And today we are diving into an enlightening conversation about educational experiences of Black students and the critical role of their parents.
This is Back Talk by Successful Black Parenting Magazine, the most listened to podcast for parents by parents.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning into Back Talk by Successful Black Parenting Magazine, your go-to podcast talk show for parents. Now, when you're watching this, I need a little favor from you. I need you all to spread the word about the show, tell your friends, shout it out to your followers, because sharing is truly caring. And don't forget to use our hashtag BackTalk when you post. But here's a little extra twist that you guys can do. You can always add a comment and we'll get back to you with your questions. We want to always have those conversations with you guys to find out what it is that you're thinking about our show. We need that feedback. Now, let's talk about this recent report by the United Negro College Fund, UNCF. It involved myths about Black parents' involvement in children's education. Now, you all have heard that, Black parents aren't involved in their child's school. Well, this report says differently. And it highlights that Black students often perform better with Black teachers. And that emphasizes the importance of representation in education. It really does. So today we're privileged to have Dr. Meredith Anderson from UNCF, an expert who has been instrumental in this research. We'll be discussing the key findings of the report, the impact of these findings on our community, and what steps can be taken to support Black students and parents more effectively. So let's dive into this crucial discussion, and welcome to the show, Dr. Anderson. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
There we go. It was a little delay. I can hear you for a second there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, we are so happy to have you on the show.
Okay.
We can hear you just fine now. I think we have a delay. We are having a storm, so guys, just bear with us. Let's talk about the report. So, can you give us an overview of the UNCF report titled "Hear Us, Believe Us: Centering African American Parent Voices in K through 12 Education"?
Yes. Yeah, so thank you, Janice. So essentially, back in 2012 is when we began this work. We started with our inaugural report, Done to Us, Not With Us, where we surveyed Black parents and asked them questions about education. And again, in that report, overwhelmingly, they said, they want their kids to go to college, that they were engaged. And again, this is what we saw again in this latest report. So this is the second addition to our UNCF Perceptions research series. And so in the series, we hear from parents, we hear from students, community leaders, counselors about their perspectives of education. And so we were really excited. We surveyed 500 parents on the national level, Black parents, and also we conducted a subsample of Black parents, 1,200 Black parents across different cities from Chicago, Indianapolis, Atlanta, Houston, Memphis, and New Orleans. And in the report, we talk about some city-specific level results from those cities. And so this report for us dispels many of those myths related to Black parents. We know Black parents are engaged. We know that they want to lift their voices for change and have been for decades. Like you said, we hear that often that Black parents aren't involved or they're not engaged, but we know that not to be true. And we've seen that in the report and in various findings.
So let me ask you, you did an initial study, but what prompted this study particularly on Black parents and students?
So for this particular study, we just wanted to follow up to see, are we seeing changes? Is the environment different? And we wanted to assess, what are some of their needs? What are some of their desires in the education sector? And we also wanted to highlight highlight the crucial role of Black parents. That was a deviation from the first iteration of the report. In this report, one of the key findings is that for Black parents that where their children attended schools with more Black teachers, there were better outcomes. So we see that they were less likely to be disciplined. We see that Black parents had higher aspirations for college for their children, and that they were more respected. You know, they overwhelmingly said they were respected at their schools, but it increased when they're Black teachers. So we know that there's that commonality when having a Black teacher. We know that they care for our students. We know that they have high expectations, and so we just want to uplift those messages, especially on this day. This is Black Teacher Appreciation Day, and so we want to appreciate the Black teachers for all they do for our students.
All right. Well, as a former Black public school teacher, I can tell you it is so true from firsthand experiences and just things that the white teachers don't think about. For instance, we as Black teachers protect our Black students. Okay. So I remember an incident where a Black girl had on a dress because she had more junk in her trunk back there, just to say that her dress rose like maybe 4 inches higher. But in the front, it met all of the, dress code requirements. And I had to go to her defense and like, listen, if this was on any other girl, that dress would be in dress code. I said, you cannot, fault her for her body shape and don't shame her for her body shape. I had protected so many Black students. And again, you also kind of feel that mother kind of vibe with your students. And I could talk to them privately. They felt like they could come talk to me privately. They share some things that just would knock you on the floor. You couldn't even fathom what these children are going through. So yes, Black teachers are important. And but Black Teacher Appreciation Day, I want you guys out there to know that who are teachers, Black teachers especially, we appreciate you. So thank you for bringing that up. Now, the report dispels myths about Black parents' involvement in their children's education. And I said one earlier on in the introduction that you might have heard things like, oh, Black parents aren't involved in their child's education. They don't come out to, open houses, open school, back to school day, whatever it is the school's having. But can you share some of the myths and realities you found? Like, how do they contrast?
Sure. So I think one of the key myths is that Black parents aren't involved, with their child's education, or that they're disengaged, that they don't care, that they don't know about this process related to college readiness. So those are some of the myths. And actually, we conducted a separate study with counselors, teachers, and some students. And that report will be forthcoming. But some of those findings, we asked open-ended questions about, so what are one of the main barriers to students of colors to their success in higher education? And you would be surprised, or maybe not surprised, to see the comments. It was, oh, these parents, they're not engaged. They don't know. It's the parents. And so again, it's that criminalizing that deficit narrative when it comes to our Black parents. And we just wanted to highlight that. We wanted to highlight, one, the myths that we're seeing, but then also substantiate what we're seeing in the data. And so what we found in this report was that nearly 90% of Black parents believe, again, it's important that their child attend college. Over 80% check their child's homework on a regular basis, or speak to their child's teacher on a regular basis. But they also want more opportunities to be involved. And so even in the focus groups, we talked to parents, and they talked about how one parent said, when I came to the school, the first thing I knew I had to do was be an advocate. And she talked about her experience being more of a partnership. So she was talking to the teachers, the administrators, and everyone in the school knew her. And so I think for parents, we know that our Black parents, they advocate not only for their own children, but they're there to stand up for the entire community. They're advocating for Black students, for all students. And so we wanted to ensure that we're uplifting their advocacy and their commitment to education overall.
Yes, indeed. I know that is really important. Now, let's just talk about some of the unique challenges that Black parents face in supporting their children's education that often aren't considered by the school administration, and how can schools better address these challenges?
Yeah, so I think some of the key challenges, some parents felt that they weren't respected. We heard that not only in this study, but we heard that in previous studies, and they felt like, excuse me, education. And the reason we titled our last report "Done to Us, Not with Us" was that parents felt like, they weren't listened to. Their voices weren't considered. And so I think for schools, it's important that you listen to parents. Provide those opportunities to hear from them, and not just a act, and not let them know that we heard you, we value your voice. And so I think it's important that they provide those opportunities, that they keep an open dialogue between parents and schools, but then also with teachers as well. We heard from parents that, some parents said that, they didn't have that open communication with teachers. And so I think making sure that we have that open communication is important. And meeting parents where they are, meeting parents where they are, being flexible with schedules. I know some school leaders, Black school leaders, have provided even childcare. When you have these meetings for parents that have multiple children, sometimes it's hard. I'm a parent myself, and making sure that you're trying to listen and be attentive, but then also care for your children and be involved. It could be a little difficult. And so, just trying to meet parents where they are in different opportunities with scheduling and times, I think is something that could be helpful.
I agree. I know that a lot of my parents that of my students, they work 2, 3 jobs sometimes, and they couldn't be there at the school. So one of the recommendations that I put in to with the principal during a meeting was that we live stream all of our events, and we had the television production team film all of the events so they can be mobile and they can see everything. So if it was open house at school, you can see all the different classrooms, you can see all the different spaces. And then I made sure, because we had Apple iPads for all the kids, that was something that was donated to the school, that we can do FaceTime with the parents if they wanted to, or I would do Zoom if they didn't. So, something, you could do that every day with me if we had a student who was failing or in trouble. And I didn't mind that. And so I think that's the other thing, is that we also give a lot of our personal time. We could give a lot of ourselves, but there are ways to keep parents involved, and schools just have to get more creative about that so that they can support these parents and support the children by doing so. Let me ask you about
Yeah.
the representation of Black teachers and administrators, and how significant is that, and how does it foster a positive educational environment for Black students?
Yeah, so I think representation is so critical in our schools. It's something that I feel as a society we don't value enough. On the national level, that number is slowly declining. We always say, there's about 7% of Black teachers. I think that's slowly declining. Black principals have been around 10%. I think that's maybe around 9% or so now. But I believe that, having Black representation is important so students can see themselves, that they can see what they can become, that they can be in the classroom, that they can be a principal and administrator. I think our Black teachers, and we know from research, they have high expectations for our children, and not just for Black children, but for all children. Research substantiates that Black teachers are important for communities. And so I think it's important that students see themselves. But then also what we found in the study on the city level, particularly I believe in Atlanta and Indianapolis, was that having more Black teachers, they're more likely to have cultural and societal lesson plans. So they're bringing in the things that are happening, things that are going on across the country. Our Black teachers are doing that. And so I think that's important, because Black teachers make it a point to ensure that students are seeing themselves in the text, that they are learning their history, that they are incorporating those things in the lesson plans. And so for Black teachers, they are important. I think back to my own first Black teacher, KK. Shout out to her on this Black Teacher Appreciation Day. And she instilled just a love for reading. She was caring. I was young, but I knew she looked like, excuse me, she looked like me. She cared for me, and I felt loved and supported. And that's what our Black teachers are there. They're there to promote a rigorous academic curriculum, but they love our babies. And so I think that supporting them any way we can, both on the national level, local level, city level, is very important.
So now we have this movement in different southern states like Florida and Alabama to get rid of Black history, basically, in any way they seem that they can, right? We have the Governor DeSantis, you know, getting rid of the honors Black history program, period. They left Asian, they left everyone else's, but specifically got rid of that. And now have banned talking about anything that they perceive as woke, as if that's a bad word, right? So Black teachers are now walking on eggshells and getting in trouble for trying to teach basic cultural lessons, even if it's just an aside to their lesson plan. So I taught television production, right? So, I gave children a voice, these teens a voice to say what they wanted to say and however they wanted to say it. But now, if I was still teaching there in Florida, I would have to be very careful about what I release. How is that going to affect our Black students? I just wanted to get your opinion on that to see what you thought about that.
Yeah, I think it's doing a great disservice to our students. They need to understand the history and culture and be appreciated. And so it's just a way to further alienate not only Black students, but Black teachers, because we're trying to recruit more Black teachers into the profession. We're trying to keep them in the profession. But if you have these barriers to where, they can't talk freely about truth, they can't speak that truth to power. If they're not able to do that, then it creates it disincentivizes teachers into coming into the profession. They're already burned out from the pandemic and some of the barriers that we see there. So I think it's really important that educators also just look to the Department of Education. They do have, and we have in the report a link to just a letter that they have, a press release that talks a little bit in depth about how they can talk about some of these issues without some of the repercussions. So I would encourage them to look there as well, look to the Department of Education for some guidance there. But yeah, I think it does, having that, those barriers creates barriers for our students to learn and creates barriers for their opportunities in the future.
Okay. Well, what role does the community, and especially community support, play in enhancing the educational outcomes of Black students? And is there a way that we can mobilize this type of support?
Yes, I do think the community, the voice is important, especially of our Black parents. So, in this report, we talk about how, close to or over 90% said they wanted more opportunities to have their voices heard into education laws. And so I think for us at UNCF and for other community organizations is figuring out ways to support those parents. Maybe it's providing some talking points. Maybe it's providing avenues to be able to write letters to their representatives, or figuring out ways to partner in other avenues. I'm based in Washington, D.C., and we have an organization called PAVE, Parents Amplifying Voices in Education. And they have been really successful in mobilizing parents, the majority of which I would say are African American, to have their voices heard. They're talking to the council, they're speaking to the mayor, they're leading in their communities. And so I think being able to mobilize on a larger scale is important, because collective voice and action really matters. And so I think having that opportunity to mobilize parents is key.
Okay. Now with the report, how is that going to help? Has this been received well by most administrators, by most school boards? What have you found?
So we just released it on Monday. And so we're going to try to push it out to those school districts, to those counselors. Just like you mentioned, those school boards, we want it in the hands of those that are making decisions, because we want them to know that, Black parents are involved. We want to center their voices. We don't want to push their voices to the margin. So we're hoping to get it in the hands of leaders. We encourage people to share, and in particular, sharing the call to actions. We have call to action recommendations for the K-12 sector, but also for the higher education sector. And I think making sure that we are uplifting those call to actions so people can act in ways that support our Black parents.
Okay, that's great. Now, let's talk about the policy changes that could possibly happen. What would you like to see?
So our first recommendation for the K-12 sector is to invest unapologetically in Black teachers. And we talk about different ways that that can happen in terms of hiring on the K-12 level, at the district level, at the CMO level, making sure that we're investing in our Black teachers. We encourage schools and districts to create more intentional opportunities for parent involvement, like we talked about earlier. And then again, creating opportunities that where textbooks reflect African American history and culture. You talked about those barriers there, but we want to make sure we're continuing to push on that. And one of the key pieces when you talked about community is making sure that schools are partnering with organizations to provide resources and services to families. So one finding in the study was that close to 50% of Black parents couldn't name organizations to help assist their child in the learning environment. And so we want to make sure that we're increasing that. We want to make sure that parents know where to go, that they have the resources, connecting with UNCF and others that can help them navigate this education space. And we also want to value and prioritize support staff in schools. So parents, when we ask them things to help, they talked about that, having more support staff for their children, and they wanted teachers to be paid more within that too. And so making sure that we're prioritizing the staff that are in the school is some of the key recommendations for the K-12 level. And then for the higher education level, we're again making intentional efforts to expose students and families to college opportunities. So thinking about how can colleges and universities go into the community, talk to parents about financial aid and financial literacy, because we know that that's important and we know that parents wanted to hear it. And then again, just encouraging our HBCUs to partner with parents to, again, do some of those activities as well, provide financial literacy. And then ensuring our teacher education programs are including what we talked about, anti-racist, culturally relevant teaching practices, so we can prepare the next generation of teachers to be able to work effectively with students and our Black parents.
Fantastic. This report came at a great time where it seems to be some erasure, not only in history, but even from, redacting the affirmative action policies and DEI. So we need this so much. What are some practical steps that our parents who are listening can take to overcome some of these barriers to involvement in their education?
I think a key barrier is to, stay attuned to some of the issues going on in your school and your district. Ask questions. I would say never be afraid to ask a question related to the learning environment of your child. Ensuring that you're asking key questions related to their achievement. So if there's some discrepancies on their report card, if there's things that you see that aren't right, making sure you bubble that up to the administrators. And one key piece that we push on is the lack of transparency too often with our school districts when it comes to providing data on racial demographics and the differences in achievement. And so some schools and districts that varies across the state. And so I would just encourage parents to look into that data and making sure that if they see that the inequities, that they're pushing on those as well. But then also testifying at school boards, I think at meetings, at hearings for the council, I think that can be very effective. That when we show up, when parents show up and highlight our voices, it matters. And so making sure that parents are active in the community, like we know they are, is some of the key steps that we think could be effective too.
I love that idea. I would like to add that I would love to see more Black parents run for school board positions where they're not appointed. And, that would be powerful
Yes.
if we can see more of that. So if someone ever told you you had a big mouth and you have a lot of ideas and opinions, that should be you running for office right now. So, look at the school board, see what seats are becoming available and challenge those seats. Well, looking forward, Dr. Anderson, what additional research is needed in this
Yes.
space?
So I think one piece that we're looking into, and we want to conduct additional research with parents. We are working on a toolkit. We're working on a toolkit to provide parents with some of the resources to be able to advocate for various issues in education. So we heard that they wanted toolkits. We want to make it. We want to create toolkits. But we also want to hear from their children. So we conducted survey research and focus groups with Black students, and we're excited to kick off that research soon. And so I think that more research is needed in that regard. And in terms of the Black teachers, because we know that was such an important finding, I think highlighting that research, we've seen the importance of Black teacher research for decades. And so I think highlighting that research into understanding, what do Black teachers mean to Black parents? How are they communicating? How are they partnering? And I would add just one key piece here is just more research into the contributions of our HBCUs and how they have educated Black teachers as well. We have a study highlighting that from our Frederick D. Patterson Research Institute that talks about the importance of HBCUs in bringing in more Black teachers. It's the hard work of hard work. And so I would just encourage people to check that out as well. But we're excited to perform this research because we don't do this research so it can go in a vacuum. We want to share it so it can be uplifted, and we would like you to share it as well. So please contact us. You can check out this report at uncf.org/parent voices, and we'll be sure to partner with you all in however way possible.
Well, we are sharing it on our platform, especially here today with the podcast. We'll make sure we do an article to go with it. But we're running out of time. I want to see if there's anything else that you want to pull out from the report that we did not talk about that you think is important, or any message that you might have to our listeners.
I think one piece I didn't pull out was that, we asked parents, would education be more effective if there were more, Black organizations and leaders involved? And so in the first report, about 62% said, education would be more effective. And so I would just say it's just a call to action to partner with local Black organizations, parent with Black organizations, not only parent-led, but also just historic civil rights organizations. We want to be able to partner and help. And so I would say that that's a key finding, that of course that representation matters, and we're seeing that it matters to our Black parents as well.
Well, fantastic. Dr. Anderson, I want to thank you for joining us today on our show. It's been a pleasure speaking with you on this topic and debunking these myths.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay. And a big shout out to all of you tuning in and engaging with us here at Back Talk by Successful Black Parenting Magazine, the syndicated podcast that's a must for parents. Make sure you follow us on Facebook. We're at Black Parenting One, and on Instagram, we're Successful Black Parenting. Don't forget to swing by our website, successfulblackparenting.com, where you'll find loads of excellent resources to help you excel in your parenting journey. Now, we'll be back with more next week. Until next time, I wish you all the best and much success. Take care. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to Back Talk by Successful Black Parenting Magazine. We'll see you soon.